Welcome in, everyone. This is Heart to Heart. I am Mr. 6'6", along with Miss Uma B, and No Time for Games. This is our featured show here on POF that we do every Wednesday at 6 p.m. And this week, we will actually be speaking on interracial dating. We have a special guest, Miss Kelly Rio, who is going to be sharing her experience with us, but also No Time for Games. And Uma will be guest for the show today as well. So we're going to start with Uma and just let her tell us about her experience in interracial dating and how it's affected her in her dating life.
Awesome. And I feel like when one person's talking, you guys go ahead and mute so that way we don't have any background noise and you guys are free to just chill while we have the one person talking. All right. Hi guys, my name is Uma B, Royal Badge Uma B here on the apps. And one thing that you probably don't know about me is that I actually prefer to date outside my race. Now, it doesn't mean I've never dated somebody of my race. I've dated Guyanese guys, I've dated Indian guys, but I have a preference for dating outside of my race. And I'm going to share my story with you guys why I do that. I think sometimes in the dating world, it's so easy to pass judgment. And if you see somebody that's like in an interracial couple, you might make like your own judgments about why those people are together. And I want to tell you guys that most of us are doing it for love and for our comfort and our preferences. So I'm hoping that tonight, when myself, and my other two lovely guests share our stories, you guys can be more understanding about why we date outside of our race. So for me, it's very simple. I am beautiful, but growing up in the Caribbean where everybody looks like me, right? I wasn't pretty. I wasn't gorgeous. In fact, in my culture, the West Indian culture, I wasn't that great looking because I am a darker skinned Indian person. And back then, I don't know what it's like now. I have to preface that, but back then, we had people that guys that didn't really want to date me. In fact, my first boyfriend, I was so in love with this guy, like my first real boyfriend. He broke up with me because he was attracted to my best friend, and she was lighter than me, she was skinnier than me. And it was a very heartbreaking moment to be in because that's what I just kind of like put in the back of my mind, that guys don't really like you because you're dark or you're thicker, you're curvier, my body type. So I did date when I was living in the Caribbean. I dated and everything else, but I just never thought of myself as the girl that guys went crazy for because, of how I looked. Then I came to America. And the American men loved me. Wow. I am now exotic. I am beautiful. I am foreign. And I'll tell you what, it's an amazing thing to be so like loved on and admired. And I've never really heard men say to me, "Oh, you're pretty," or "You're gorgeous," or "You're beautiful," until I really came to America. And then in America, as you guys know, there's a variety of different guys, but I found that for my preference, black men did it for me. And I'll tell you why. One, they love my body. Black men, from my experience, I can only talk about my experience. From my experience, they love thicker, curvier girls. They like a little meat on the bones, and I love that because that's who I am. And then they loved like my ethnicity because it was like very close to theirs. And the way I was brought up, our cultures were similar as well. So they really identified with that. And I found when I dated, in my lifetime of dating, the black guys that I dated, I just felt really at home with. I felt very comfortable with. We had a lot of similarities in our culture, and that's why that became my preference. So I wanted to share that with you guys, why my preference is dating outside of my race, American men, but specifically black guys. And I wanted to share that. I'm going to kick it over to Games because I know Games has a story, and I want to hear what her story is.
Thank you, Uma. As she said, my name is No Time for Games. And yes, I have a preference. It's just always happened that way. I grew up in the west side of Cincinnati, in the ghetto, in the hood, like the hood. And so I was raised there for 13, 14, 15 years. I think in the middle of my 15th year, I was forced to move from Cincinnati to Indiana. And all my schools I went to was 90% Black American. So when I moved from Cincinnati to Indiana, it was a huge cultural shock for me because it was the opposite. There was like 2% Black American and everybody was white. And then like all the white boys would just look at me and be like, she's different. Like she talks different. She walks different. She acts different. Like she's not like the white girls that we've ever been around. So there has always been that stigma for me. And so it's just always been a preference for me because that's always been at my hand for that. So I'm going to kick it over to Kelly and let Kelly explain her story and then we'll get into the questions.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Well, my story is a little similar to Uma, right? I'm from Brazil, and everybody says that Brazilian girls have a beautiful skin or body, or everybody say a lot of that. But here we used to do everybody's is like that. So it's really similar because we are common here. We are normal here, right? And the Brazilian guys are a little different too. The Brazilian guys are people that are guys that really, thank you, really not like to have a commitment, and they are not so serious, right? They don't give too much value to woman because there's a lot of women here. So, and I think I always says that I'm sure that the man of my life is not in Brazil. I always says that, and I remember once one have a Olympics here, right in Rio, and the city was full of people for 1,000 different countries, and I remember that I met an English guy, and this English guy was like Scotland guys from Europe, right? And they were really respectful, right? Was completely different from Brazilians. Brazilians come and say, hey girl, hey baby, and we're right with can't. And the guys was no, can I buy you a drink or it's okay. They asked to the waiter to bring the drink for us and start to and start to talk, and they didn't come like dogs, right? They respectful. And I have a friend that she was with me, and she thinks that was strange because we deal with Brazilians. They are so much faster. And she says, the guy is beautiful. Oh my God, he don't try to kiss me. And we try, and I would say, but in his country is something that this is disrespectful. So Brazilian girls are not used to that. And sometimes we want that respect, right? Because it's something that is show how gentleman the guy is, how right he trying to show the value first. It's not only the body, it's not your face. They want to talk, they want to see what you bring, if you're smart, if you're intelligent. And sometimes here is not like that. Definitely the most of the times, of course, have nice guys, but the most of is for me is not interesting, right? And I met West, right? Uma knows, everybody knows, and he's completely different too. He's smart. He's a gentleman. He's a person that I want to share my life, right? And exactly how I asked to do for the universe. So, and he's American, right? And I noticed that Americans is there's similarity with some stuffs, It's not so different. I think probably European people is a little different, but is not like Brazilians. So I definitely prefer because of that. I think is that.
So clearly, three beautiful women, all who, just based on what was in their regular neighborhood, didn't really find much to choose from. Wasn't really liking the way these guys were approaching them. And they said, I will go outside of my neighborhood to find the man that I'm looking for. I'm manifesting this guy. I know he's out there, and he doesn't have to be from where I'm from. So that's a really cool insight to hear all three of you say that. So I know, Games, you may have a couple of questions for all three of the ladies. All three of you. Would you want to go ahead and answer your question for Uma? Or I tell you what, Cold-Hearted, welcome in. We do have a gentleman who will be giving us his perspective into interracial dating. So if you want to go ahead, Cold-Hearted, and take yourself off mute, tell us what your experience with interracial dating is, and then we'll move into the questions right after you. Sir.
First of all, how's everybody doing? My experience with interracial dating is, for me in particular, growing up where I grew up, I find beauty in all different types of women. But for me, I wasn't too well accepted at the time, whether it's been I haven't in the term glowed up yet. People. I found the vibes of different types of people, and it just so happened to be people outside of my race. Even when I was a young kid, my mom would say, you were always fascinated with people outside of your race." And to me, I don't think it was a factuation. It was something about them that drew in. And then as I grew older, I came more into history, learning different cultures, learning different backgrounds. And it's always a beautiful experience seeing something outside of your day to day. And I think that's one thing that has always attracted me to interracial dating.
Love that. I think learning culture, it does. It opens your mind to, the different foods, the different religions, the different ways of dressing, just different ways of speaking. It's so much that these other cultures can teach you. So for you, wanting that knowledge and going and searching and seeking that knowledge is dope. Games, you want to come on and ask your question? Group?
So my question is going to be a very vague question to all three of you, because we know dating another culture, there are cultural differences. When did you mentally and emotionally know that you were ready to take on those battles? Or did you ever come across a time where you were just like, you know what, obviously we're still here, but like, were there ever times that you were just like, you know what, this is a little bit too much mentally or emotionally to handle? Because as a very lady, I was gonna say something, but as a person for myself, like I know like the struggles. But Oma, you tell me yours. Like when you were mentally and emotionally, you knew like, okay, I can do this now. Like as before, like when I was younger, I will get into my story in a minute after you guys answer. But there's a reason why I worded that.
Okay. So the biggest struggle for me was realizing that I do like dating various kinds of people, mostly like outside of my culture, but dealing with the stigma of that. Because for my culture, I'm East Indian heritage ethnicity. It is there is a bit of racism. Let's be clear. There's a bit of racism there. And it was not looked upon kindly if I dated a Black man. Now, they didn't mind if I dated a white man, but dating a Black man, that was a different story. So I had to deal with the backlash of that from members of my community. I had to, I had to manage some insults, threats of people, wanting to discontinue being my family or friends. because of my choices. But I had to, like, when I mentally prepared myself for this was when I realized that the general idea of it, who I date and who I love, should be nobody's business. So if people were putting themselves in that position to be so involved in my life and was willing to cut me out of their life because of my choices, then the decision was clear, right? I had to leave those people alone. Those are toxic people, because I should be free to date who I want to date and be with who I want to be with. So I mentally prepared myself for that when my ex-husband is Black. Our children are biracial, half Indian, half Black. And when we went through the challenges we went through and seeing how people reacted to us, it made me realize, like, I can't live my life for other people anymore. And that's a big thing in the Caribbean, is that we do live for our parents. We do live for the approval of our family. So I had to grow up in that moment and realize, like, I can't do this no more. I got to live for myself. And that's when I made the change.
All right. And how about you, Games?
Kelly.
All
I'll
right,
go
Kelly.
last.
Can you hear me? Can you hear
Yes.
me? Okay. I think it's people don't understand the difference of language, right? And to be far away, for example, in like Wes is in Texas and I'm here, and people say, really, that you're gonna waste your time? The person is like 1,000 miles from you, and you alone here. Why you don't enjoy? And people used to say that, and I that's exactly a little what Uma says, like, this is not anybody business, right? I have to see if I'm happy or not, what make me good or not. This is about here. And the other stuff is like, Wes, for being American, he don't know about Brazilian stuff, some things in Brazil, and I don't know some things in American either. So I think is good for the couple, and your partner wants to be inside your world too, and share together what is good, what is wrong, what the other needs, right? And together build a good relationship, even with the language or culture or other stuffs. Everybody have a world before we met each other, right? And I think it's a little difficult to me, some stuffs that is his world, right? And some stuffs that he don't understand my world too. So we build together, trying to get this connection to understand ourselves. I speak English, he's learning Portuguese, and this is amazing for me. And we can sometimes, if I'm mad with him, I can say words in Portuguese. But I think is good that, but I think the challenge is like that. People that don't understand why I have to uh, uh, like someone so far away. And I said, you don't choose, right? Your heart choose what you want, what you need for your life. And because I have more connection with someone in Texas than here, right? And this is not about the culture, but was what we match, what we want, and the other gives to us, and I when we give to each other. I think is that.
Love it. Grio, if you want to go ahead and
G-
come off mute for sure.
Go ahead, cold hearted.
So for me, I would have to say I've never really found any challenges or disconnect because I've always been a person who doesn't care what other people think. I've never really followed the status quo. I've never tried to fit in with being popular, going with what other people believe, because at the end of the day, I always knew I'm going to do what makes me happy, regardless of how other people feel. And especially if it's dating outside of my race. I'm not going to let someone someone or a community stop me, whether that be my community, their community, of if we're happy together and we found love, genuine friendship, whatever. I'm not gonna let nobody else deter me from what could be one of the greatest blessings in my life. I always tend to think of Romeo and Juliet, people who were supposed to hate each other, Hatfields and McCoys, people that were trying to hate each other, but they fell in love. You feel me? And they didn't let nobody stop that. So why would I let anybody else stop that or change my mind from anything? Especially at the end of the day, if I'm supposed to be locked in with this person, it's me and them versus the world, and I'll take the world on for my person any day of the week. There you go.
And games.
I like all those answers. Those answers are so amazing. Let me just say that. So for me, I have a completely opposite um outlook as I was growing up. Cause growing up, it was that I was my grandparents' favorite on both sides. I was my mom's favorite and I was my dad's favorite. So dating outside of my ethnicity was a big thing growing up. Um, it was uncalled for. And it was a cultural shock for me when I moved from the city that I was living in because I didn't know any better. So when I came to the city that I lived in with my father and them, it was frowned upon. And so when I tell you, like, I was physically and mentally and emotionally beaten for 2.5 years because they thought, like, my father thought that he could physically and emotionally beat me and think that I wouldn't, like, want to date black men. Like, he could beat it out of me. And so there was a time where I'm like, is this even worth it? And then I became an adult and now I'm just like, if you ain't part of my three F's, like I take your opinion with a grain of salt, right? And if you want to know my three F's, you can ask me after the show because it is a featured show, so I'm not going to display what my three F's are. If you've been around me enough, y'all know what my three F's are. So, um, I didn't have that same growing up because it literally, if I was to say that this is who I wanted to date, it literally caused me physical harm. So I just knew that once I turned 18, that my future didn't have to become what I was being raised. So that was my outlook. Go ahead, Six.
All right. So my question is going to come from a space of once you're actually in the relationship, what are the challenges? When you find yourself in a situation of being with this person, you're out and about, and it comes to you in that moment. Do you guys look at each other? Do you guys do you defer to your man, being the ladies? You Grio, do you take the role in that moment of being the shield from the outside world? What are your experiences in the moment when that weird person that just doesn't understand what you and your love looks like, when they try to impose their thoughts and their rules and their values on you? How are you guys receiving?
Do I
Let's
go
start
first?
with Uma. Yeah, let's
Okay.
start with Uma.
Whew, that's a loaded question because me and my man, we are so strong. We're strong personalities. And when we met and we got together, we were clashing a lot, as the apps know, because we had very public public disagreements, if you will. But you know what it is? The cool thing about us is he might be a different color than me. He's black, I'm brown, but we have a little bit of the same culture. So I'm Guyanese American. He's Trini Panamanian American, but he's from Brooklyn. He's from New York. So that New York part, I really struggled with. It's a whole different lifestyle in New York. You know, the things that bother me don't bother him. We have very different outlooks on life. For him, I'll never forget this. In the beginning part of our relationship, he said it's either something or it's nothing. If it's nothing, don't bring it to me because it's nothing. If it's something, you have to be aware if you bring it to me, it's gonna be something. Like we pulling up, we getting digits dropped, you know, and I'm like, whoa. I don't know about all of that. That's a different kind of lifestyle for me. So I had to learn him and he had to learn me. And the culture clash was there. And because of our ethnicities, like there's just things that he don't understand because of my culture. Like the way he was brought up, women are very strong. His mother, he was raised in a single mother household. His aunts, you know, a lot of the people in his life, they are single moms or strong women, strong Black women. So he's not used to like a woman crying. He's not used to a woman being frail in her energy because I grew up depending on men. I grew up with, you know, believing the man is the household, the head of the household. So what he says goes, and I defer to him and I listen to him. And he didn't really have that. He had more dating New York women coming from his family, stronger women. So we had to kind of find our way into the roles, and that's what we had to do. It took a lot of communication and a lot of willingness to listen because you can't be in this kind of relationship if it's your way or the highway. You have to respect the fact that this other person has a culture that is different to yours and it does not make sense. He does not understand me crying. To this day, we've been together close to 4 years. He still don't get it when I cry, but he has more empathy towards me, right? Because in his culture, you don't cry, you suck it up, you move along, you keep it pushing. But in my culture, you could spend the whole day crying, right? Because you and your feelings. So that's what the biggest challenge was for me is how different we were. But what I love about it is that we did have to communicate and find our way to each other. So I've actually learned to have a tougher skin because of him, because he taught me that from his culture and seeing the women in his family and how they move. It toughened me up and was like, you know what? That's not that big a deal. It's nothing. It's not something. So we can learn
Right.
from each other. I feel is the biggest benefit is we can learn from each other.
I love that. Before we go to the next guest,